Hello and welcome to another one of my thoughts videos. Welcome back. It's been a while since I have done anything like this, as I've been thinking a lot and letting hopefully this scam situation of 2020 to pass away. But it's lingering along. But anyway, I've been slow on thinking about things because there have been so many different topics that I would have liked to share, but some of them are really quite out there and I'm not into really stressing over these things. So I want to get back to basically the basics to see where I might head from here. Remember that you need, when you're thinking intelligently, you need to think in concepts, you need to be brutally honest with yourself, and you need to really be open to being wrong sometimes. And because being wrong is not actually a bad thing, because if someone is able to point it out to you, or if you find out on your own that you are wrong, great, because now you can learn something, correct yourself, and come out the better for it. So that's something that you need to take into account. One thing that I have noticed just recently, which got me thinking again, is another step in those things that you need to look out for in being honest about things, is that some people who are very sequential in their thinking have great difficulty with the possibility that you have apparent conflicts, or what do you call those, contradictions. Some people cannot manage the idea of saying it is one way but yes but no in a situation. They want either a yes or a no, and they're not very grey. They're not able to get a balance. Sometimes a truth goes to two very extremes. Sometimes it's 100% one way, but at the same time it's 100% another way, which looks absolutely contradictory. You need to be able to discern the difference between when you get something that's contradictory, to figure out first whether one is right, one is wrong, or one is partially right and partially wrong, or partially wrong and partially right, or whether both of them might actually be right at the same time. Now, it is possible for things to coexist in opposition, because in opposition there are many factors that come into play. They balance things. You say something can be black and something can be white at the same time, because they might be a mixture, they might be spots. So to say that it's black or it's white is incorrect, because it might have black and white spots, and it might have other colours mixed into it as well. And so some people get confused with that. I find that quite often in trying to communicate many of my ideas. I say one thing, then I say something that is apparently in opposition to what I've just said, and the person can't quite grasp the connection between the two. And that's quite frustrating. You can say, for example, that viruses exist, but you can say that viruses don't exist, because it depends on other factors. Viruses, in the definition that we have, do exist, because that's what they've defined it as, and the history of it has been using this word for a long time. But at the same time, the very definition of a virus, that it's a boogeyman thing that is here out to get us and attack us, is actually 100% wrong. So even though viruses exist under the definitions they give us, under the same definitions they don't exist, because those viruses are exosomes. They are not boogeymen like bacteria that are out to get us and kill us. They're actually part of our immune system. So you've got to be very careful about your discernment in the way you think. Some things can be totally contradictory. They can be yes and no at the same time. So when you're examining concepts and being brutally honest with yourself, you've also got to consider that. You've got to develop that ability to discern what is actually right and what isn't right. And even when there is an apparent contradiction, it may actually be true in both cases to bring a balance. An example of that could be a situation I had where on a forum I answered a question and said that according to my knowledge, that there are Egyptian hieroglyphics in Australia. I was immediately attacked and immediately shot down, and I was treated like a crazy person and everything, and nobody came to my defence. I based that saying on a person, an archaeologist, who came and toured New Zealand but about 25 years ago. Now, 25 years ago, it was a hot topic, and this archaeologist said that he had seen these hieroglyphics with his own eyes. He was a pretty respectable guy, and I believed him. And so I have for 25 years held that view that there are Egyptian hieroglyphics in Australia. Now, on further investigation, since I was torn to pieces sufficiently, I thought, right, let's go and investigate. Now, what I found was interesting, because there are some hieroglyphics in in Australia, reasonably close to Sydney. So the person that saw these hieroglyphics was entirely right, and what I was saying, I was entirely right. However, the balancing part of it is that they're probably fake. The evidence that has accrued would show that they're probably not that old, and that they were basically a hoax, that there were some people way back in the 20s when Egyptology was very interesting to the population, that someone got out there, found a rock cave in a park, a national park, and started carving these hieroglyphics. Now, some people say that the hieroglyphics that they wrote have a very coherent and exact translation. Others say that they're total garbage. And so, where do you stand? Some say yes, some say no. I, in the end, decided that being so close to Sydney, on the east coast of Australia, very far from Egypt, that they are probably fake. However, that it did raise the issue that could Egyptians have arrived in Australia? It appears, according to the research that I then did to ponder this a little further, was that the Egyptians actually had ships that were seagoing and were twice the size of what Christopher Columbus had to discover America. It is documented that they did manage to at least coast hug their way around to India. From India down to Australia, it's not that far. Most of the Aboriginal tribes in Australia are mostly gather towards the north, and the most diverse groups are all in the north. So it would indicate that most of the Aborigines that arrived in Australia came from the north. So it is still feasible, in my opinion, in particular if they have maps of ancient Phoenician maps, I think, that show the coast of Antarctica. It means that at some time in history it was a lot warmer. We had no ice on the coast of Antarctica enough to actually map it. And it shows that there were many people, like, for example, the Polynesians, who managed to island hop across the Pacific in little canoes with nothing more than sticks and shells tied on with bits of fibre as their maps. They were able to navigate across the largest ocean in the world and find teeny-weeny little islands. And so why couldn't Egyptians manage to sail their way down to Australia? The ancient peoples weren't as stupid as people think. I think they were just as smart, if not even smarter than we are today. So here's an example of yes and no at the same time. Yes, there are hieroglyphics in Australia, but they're probably modelled on Egyptian hieroglyphics and are not Egyptian hieroglyphics. But that also doesn't discount the possibility that the original peoples of Australia might have come from a civilization such as Egypt, or from Asia or otherwise. But the original Aborigines bear little resemblance to the Asians. They bear more resemblance to those of Papua New Guinea. And where did they come from? It's logical that they came from the West. It's only my suppositions, but here's an example of a train of thought that people found very hard to consider. I was actually right in what I was saying. The testimony I was given was true, and the information just needed adjusting. Yet they were not intelligent enough to entertain the possibilities, and weren't intelligent enough to search for themselves and help correct or adjust my hypothesis or my understanding so far, considering it was 25 years ago, before we had the internet, that I was told personally from this archaeologist that he had seen these things. So now we know that since then they're probably fake, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. But it also remains those little questions. I wonder how far those Egyptians really did sail in their ships that were twice the size of Christopher Columbus, and way bigger than the canoes that floated across the Pacific. So there's an example. Have a great day. See you next time.